When we think about artists, usually we think about Michelangelo and Leonardo. But what about artists who helped make it possible for Michael Jordan and LeBron James to have beautiful sneakers? Well, they're important too. So let's take a moment to hear from a color designer from Nike who will be able to tell you more about the art behind shoe design.
Hi everyone, my name is Winnie Callough and I am the design director for color at Nike. You're probably wondering, what does a design director do? Well, I'm here to tell you a little bit about my job. If you think about your favorite pair of shoes, color is probably one of the most important things you think about when you purchase that pair of shoes. So my job is a little bit about the art and science of color. I've been at Nike for 17 years, and in college, I studied visual communications. I've always been interested in the arts, and I've loved creating at a very early age. I would always draw, doodle, color, but as I got older, I realized I wanted to use that passion and make it a career. I first started out at Nike as an artwork coordinator, and every opportunity I got, I was lucky enough to be surrounded by really talented designers. So I set up a lot of informationals and got to know what designers did, and I just worked my way up. My job let me become interested in working in product, and that's what I do now. I apply color onto product in the most basic sense, but I also set the strategy of what color looks like for the company every season. A lot of my job is strategy, communication, and trying to come up for solutions that involve color. There, like I said before, there is an art and science around it. For example, how do we make our products stand out and be iconic on our athletes in context of their surrounding or their environment? We consider the color of the environment and the context to which our athletes are wearing it. So think of like wearing a shoe on the basketball versus wearing your shoe on the tennis court. Color looks very, very different in those environments. We consider the color of that environment and what we want to do. Also, we consider the materials and the science around how different materials take color and how we can manufacture the product based on the color. The software that we use mostly in my career is Adobe Suite, which is Illustrator and Photoshop. We use it to concept a lot of our work and to get illustrations and our schematics to our factory partners. Also, to get samples back, we need to know how color is going to take on to those different materials. So we do a lot of exploration on those materials and those software programs. We also have to present our ideas to our partners, which include marketing, merchandising, also cross-category design partners. And we use a lot of those software programs to communicate those ideas. In addition, we use a lot of presentation software like Keynote to communicate our vision and our strategy. I would say that the job is really fun. I've loved working in this at this company. I love my job, and every day it's solving different problems through color is really innovative. And if you're interested in more, I would highly suggest something in the creative fields. I personally started off as a graphic designer in visual communications, studying visual communications. So I think a critical problem-solving skill is important for this job. Being able to look at the bigger picture and also look at the smaller picture. So like I said, what does that look like in the store? And then also being expert at how to apply color onto product based on the materials. That's a little bit about my job as a design director in color at Nike. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thanks for tuning in.
Who'd have thought being a color designer would be so cool? So now, let's hear from another designer.
Hi, my name is Sarah Miller. I am a textile and material designer, and I graduated with a fine arts degree in textile design. While I was in school, I took a lot of classes where I learned about not only the history of textiles and materials, but the ways in which they were made and the cultures that were associated with each of them. One of my favorite techniques that I learned about was called shibori, and it's a Japanese way of using stitch techniques, very specialized stitch techniques that are pulled very tightly together, and then you over dye the piece of material. And then you cut all the stitches out and you're left with a particular type of pattern. If you'd like to learn more about shibori, you can look up this book here, and it will show you all of these different beautiful types of textile patterns that you can create using these stitch techniques. And I have a couple examples here of some over-dyed techniques that I did as well. And you can dye any colors. Typically, shibori is an indigo dyed, which is a very deep navy blue type of color, but I took a little bit of creative license and did some samples in multiple colors. But that's just one example of a really beautiful historical technique that many textile designers refer back to when they're designing new ways of creating color and pattern and texture in their designs today. A lot of those types of techniques have also died out just because they're extremely labor intensive and require a lot of effort and energy sometimes, not just from individuals, but even from machinery and equipment to produce these materials. So in addition to techniques that are dying out, there are also some new techniques that are emerging that I'll share with you a little bit further in our discussion. Some of the other things that I learned about when I was in college were really about weaving on a loom by hand, a lot about spinning and dyeing of yarn, knitting, different types of screen printing and embellishment. If you think about different types of embroidery or adding sequins and beads, anything that enhances the surface of the material, which is also known as surface design, was something that I also studied while I was in school. And we also learned how to put patterns into repeat. So if you had a particular pattern that you had designed in a certain colorway, we learned special tricks on different types of software, how to put that pattern into repeat so that it could be printed out on yardage and then used as part of cut and sew materials in the fashion industry. So when I graduated from college, I was really lucky enough to get a job where I was designing area rugs for a company called Shaw Living. And I worked with a studio of designers where we created lots of different woven rugs from very high price points to extremely approachable price points. I had a lot of fun designing rugs for Martha Stewart and rugs that were sold in stores like Target during that time. After doing that job for about 5 years, I started designing commercial carpet. And that's the kind of carpet that you'll often find when you go into schools or airports, really large public spaces, or even law firms and hotels. The interesting thing about carpet is the way in which it's made is actually tufted versus being woven, which is a different type of material technique that I had not yet learned. And it was challenging and exciting to learn this new way of making a textile that was put on the surface of a floor. If you'd like to learn more about tufting, I have a book that I can show you here. This is called Tufting Legacies, and it's a book that is written about the people who designed the tufting technology. And they have a business that's based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they still continue to make the machines that are used for tufting. And it's just interesting to learn about that topic and ways in which you can make carpet. So after working for about 7 years, I felt like it was really time for me to add some education to the art degree that I had. I was working in a very traditional corporate environment as a female designer, and I was pretty young, and it just felt very important to me that I prove to myself and to others that I was multifaceted in my skills and also in my mindset. So I enrolled in an MBA program and started working towards getting my master's degree at night while I was working full-time as a textile designer during the day. And it was really fun for me to be able to use both my left and right side of the brain. And I think that in the end, it has really made me a more thoughtful and pragmatic designer. After about 10 years into my career, I decided that I wanted to learn more about textiles and materials, and that I really wanted to be surrounded by a much larger design community than the one I had currently been in. And I was fortunate enough to get a job working for Nike as a material designer alongside hundreds of other extremely talented, creative, and inspiring designers. So shifting industries from flooring to footwear was exciting, and I learned that even though I was designing for a completely different consumer and a completely different product, the skills that I had were very transferable, and that the creative process I had used when I designed rugs and when I designed tufted product was the same creative process, which is really truly universal in so many ways. So I think what really made me most interested in being a textile designer is that textiles are both creative and they're also extremely useful. I personally love color and pattern and texture, and I love wearing lots of different types of textures, and I love being in environments that have a specific feel because of texture, color, and pattern. And I think it's something that I was drawn to very much even as a young child. So I think once I realized that I could go to college for something so specific as textile and material design, I decided to opt out of a biology pre-med program that I was enrolled in and pursued something completely different that has been really fruitful and proven to be a very exciting career. And I think if you want to become a textile or material designer, I would say it's really important that you're curious, that you're creative, and that you're extremely committed to the process. Whether you're doing something by hand, which can be very labor intensive when it comes to materials and textiles, you really need to be committed to that process. But even if you're having them produced through a manufacturing type setting, you definitely have to stay dedicated to that process. I think also because materials are everywhere, they are a huge contributor to the global sustainability crisis. Materials are on everything you wear, everything you touch, everything you're surrounded by that is made by humankind has a materiality to it. And if you think about textiles, we wear them, they're in our homes, they're in our cars. So I would highly recommend that you have a great sensitivity towards the importance of and the understanding that you are making something that will be with us on this planet for a very long time. And if there's a way that you can consider how you might prevent that from being something that has a really long lifespan, or maybe that is completely circular, beginning with that thought as you're starting the creative process would really be key. It might even be possible that you can create a new process for creating materials or designing a textile, a new method of make, something that is fully circular, completely sustainable for the life cycle of the material, that's better for our planet. These are the things that I would encourage you to consider if you do want to go into this type of a role. There are many designers today who are busy doing all kinds of fascinating things by using organic matter like mushrooms and pineapples to create safer and more environmentally friendly bio-based materials. These will be the future material heroes of our world. And having that type of mindset, in addition to the visual creativity, is going to be integral for the future of our material designers in the world today. There are a couple different designers and really thoughtful people that I wanted to share with you if you would like to learn more about the future of materials and what might be possible as we look to the future of what's most sustainable in the world and also still inherently beautiful and relevant to our culture and our time. But you might look up Skylar Tibbetts with the Self-Assembly Lab at MIT and Neri Oxman. They're doing some really fascinating things in the world of materials today. I'd encourage you to look them up. Thanks so much.
Well, that's all for now. Be sure to check out our next video by clicking the link to the right. OMSI would like to thank our presenting sponsors, Boeing, Verizon, and also our supporting sponsors from CUI Devices and Microsoft for making STEAM Week digital content possible.